we will be discussing organic farming, how the importance of organic farming and how it impacts society now. I guess I can start with letting everybody introduce themselves. So you want to start down? I guess we can start down at the end down here.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. I know it's kind of the end of the day, and people have probably had enough to sit in the conference room, but we appreciate you being here. I'm James Schwartz. I'm in Cascade High up in Oregon. We're an OLCC licensed farm. I'm a nurse by trade, and I think that it's nice to be able to bring kind of how cannabinoid therapeutics works in the body down to the cultivation level and start to really understand what we should be doing to our plants and how we should be treating them for how we want them to interact with the body. And organic agriculture is critical to the industry. I consider myself an organic minimalist, and I think that kind of checks a few boxes. That's sustainability for the planet, it's what's best for the patient, and it's what produces the most unique plants. Minor cannabinoids are just as important to how your endocannabinoid system works as the major cannabinoids are. And so we don't ever rarely think about minor cannabinoids. And I'll throw out one little thing and then let somebody else start talking, but one of the companies who purifies CBD had a 98% pure CBD product, and the company who owned that wanted to push it further to purity. And when they pushed it to 99% pure, the drug effectiveness actually went down. And that's because in that tiny little 1%, they took out some 0.01 CBG or some 0.01 CBN or some 0.01 CBC that is really responsible for that entourage, that synergistic effect. And I think that we need to think about that when we're thinking about cannabinoid therapeutics. And when you get it down to the agricultural level is where you can really start to manipulate some of those things in a healthy, beneficial manner that really makes a difference for products in people's bodies. So,
Thank you for that, James. Move on.
My name is Gary Isaacs. I run a company called Waterborne Hydrophilic Products. I've been in the emissions control industry for over 30 years. I do a lot of my work in South Korea where they're developing products for small, medium-sized companies for the elimination of soluble chemicals and particulates smaller than 1 micron for industrial emissions control there where it's a heavy problem. But I got interested in agriculture about 7 years ago by working with the potato growers, and they were storing potatoes, and I noticed they were losing a lot of potatoes to mold and bacteria. And sometimes growers could even lose the whole crop, which represented $1 million worth of business to them. And realized that there was something I could do to help them with that, and so I got involved with saving potatoes organically. I'm all about organics. In fact, if you're not with organics, then you're probably not interested in anything that I do, because everything that I do is along the organic line. There isn't any chemical involved, and I don't want anything to do with them. I don't want them around. And so, actually, in a nutshell, thumbnail, what I'm here for is the air purification side, so that I can keep, like I do potato storage, we keep potatoes extremely healthy by just simply keeping the pathogens out of the atmosphere and returning clean air back into the growing or the storing area. And that's what brings me here.
EV sterilization?
I'm sorry?
EV sterilization?
We don't do sterilization. We don't have, no chemicals.
No, UV lab.
it's an air filtration.
No, it's filtration without a filter. We don't have any pressure drop. We don't do HEPA filters. We out-scrub HEPA filters with just simple water by duplicating the atmosphere in a blower, multiple Venturi system.
It's, we were chatting, it sounds
Yeah,
interesting.
that's cool. I'm LJ. I'm a global cultivation manager for Advanced Nutrients. We're a fertilizer company, essentially.
I'm Dale Hawk, and currently I work with a startup company where we clean waste glass and recycle it into concrete. But my interest in organic farming and mycorrhizae started about 45 years ago in forestry school when I took a mycology class. And I didn't realize until about 3 years ago that mycorrhizae is produced commercially. And so my wife, who has a business on Amazon, I got her interested in mycorrhizae, and she said, "Michael, what?" And now she's pretty knowledgeable now on it. And we also work with an organic fertilizer product that is blended with mycorrhizae.
Nice. So we see we have a pretty good panel up here. So we're going to jump right into it. The increasing importance of organic cannabis farming. Let's just start with organic farming in general. You can't just start off organically, can you? Aren't there some hoops you have to jump through, especially when you're doing outdoor type things? I know the NLP establishes certain standards before you can even call yourself an organic farm. Can any of you elaborate on any of these processes?
So certification-wise, let's look at that. So no cannabis company can actually call itself organic. It's illegal on a federal level, so the federal government doesn't even recognize this as a real plant, so you can thereby not even get an organic certification whether you wanted to or not. There are several third-party organizations that vary from state to state, and some that have a few, some representation in several states, but in Oregon it's Clean Green certified, it's Dragonfly Earth Medicine certified, so there are certifications. The problem that I have with most of the third-party certifiers is they come and test your soil once, and if you wanted to be step outside the bounds, you have them come and check your soil when you're running nice and clean, and then as soon as they're gone, you start doing whatever you like. So I have a problem with that, and some of those companies almost add a tax to you, which isn't certainly any different than you get in an organic type of certification, but it's a little uncomfortable in the weed business to be paying some third-party organization.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. So there is no organic certification as a whole, but it's up to the individual gardener.
Clean green kind of stands.
Yeah. Like I said, but they test your soil once, and then they don't come back.
And I think that's largely because there is no regulation, particularly in that area right now. I think that's largely up to the grower. It depends on what kind of products you want to produce. If you want the best there is, well, you'll do the best you can. The best you can is organic.
So if it's so important, and I can imagine that cannabis that carries the organically grown seal, or I guess is there an organically grown seal? Is there?
Well, that's what he's talking about.
Certified kind, clean green certified. Those are your organic type certificates. Those are in Oregon. I'm sure there's some in. Actually, I just did a sustainability panel with NCI last week. I know there are some Colorado ones. There's a company called Cannabis, which is kind of a consulting agency to get you onto an organic certification. And then there's Cannabis Conservancy, which I believe does organic sustainable certifications. So it varies state to state. There are in your state or where you're operating there, I'm sure there is some sort of, assuming that you're testing product now. We're just finally starting to see all of the product in California get tested, and Arizona is tested, but there's no way of tracking that because there's no tracking of product in Arizona, so it just varies state to state.
From a nutrient, whatever, fertilizer standpoint, we had to go through OIM, and that was like a nightmare, like organic input material, to say on the bottle that it was organic. And like Omri's a slam dunk compared to this. It's just like nothing but net. Like oh my God, lamb. It's like super hard to get through. But I mean, what is the basis of organic growing? You can pretty much do it in any medium as long as the input material on the plant is all organic, right? Kind of my take. As long as the plant's eating organically.
True. So, Dale, I wanted to direct a question your way. You're CEO of Wild Root. I wanted you to speak on some of the techniques that you guys are trying to either pioneer or implementing in order to move along organics, or how we see organics in this country.
Well, what we do is we have a product that is a mycorrhizal fungi. Mycorrhizal fungi is a species that's symbiotic with plants. It helps the plant absorb more nutrients and water from the soil, and at the same time it gets fed by the plant. It occurs in all non-disturbed ecosystems worldwide. When you cut the tree or plant or remove vegetation, it loses its food source and it dies. So in all cannabis and hemp growing, you have to restore the mycorrhizae to the soil, and it has a lot of benefits to the plant. Primarily, it allows the plant to absorb more moisture from the soil. You use less water, so your product is more sustainable, and it is an organic product, and it's certified organic.
Does everybody know what the mycorrhizal sphere is? So, quickly, because, Dale and I were just talking, the magic of the plant happens underground. And what you've got is you've got bacteria eat sugars, fungus eat bacteria, and they create the matrix of the mycorrhizal sphere, which is what breaks down nutrients in soil and feeds it to the plant. And so this bottom layer at the roots is really the most important developmental tool to the plant as a whole, because that plant's not going to take up those nutrients unless there's this method. Otherwise, it's like putting a straw into a vitamin water solution, and the plant's going to use parts of it. And I'm sure that LJ can talk more about how nutrients are processed in the plant. But when you're feeding your plants bottled nutrients, they're kind of sucking up this vitamin water, and the plant's using little bits of it, but it's not really breaking it down unless you got that mycorrhizal sphere at the roots.
Agreed.
Rock out.
I might just say this too. Growing healthy plants obviously makes plants stronger and more resistant to pathogen invasion. And if you get that bottom line, and a lot of growers can do that to the point where they don't have a lot of airborne pathogens, but they're still there. Airborne pathogens are still there. When we remove product, or we remove those airborne pathogens from the indoor growing environment, we do it by induced draft instead of forced draft. Forced draft causes all those pathogens, if they start at some point, to blow everywhere in the room. And when we pull a vacuum on them, we actually vacuum them out. They're all airborne, they're very light, they'll follow the vacuum. When you pull a negative in that room, then it'll pull those bacteria and mold spores to that vacuum, and we put them through a scrubber process. It is an multiple venturi system that I use for other systems, and do very effectively. We do 99.65% reduction in a single pass of radioactive polonium-210, for instance. We've got data to show that we do that. This system doesn't care whether it's a biological, live particle, or if it's a heavy metal particle. And the first tests were done with heavy metal particles. Where those heavy metal particles come, as been mentioned, we know that it comes to the uptake from the soil to a great deal of degree, but there are also some in the atmosphere that you don't see. And what you see is what hurts you, or what you can't see is what hurts you. These things are so invisible And then when we make the droplets so small as we do, the droplets are also invisible, but they'll interact and collect with those particles and then drop them out. So to keep that air clean, then you have a much better chance of keeping those pathogens from spreading to your healthy plant.
One piece of why that's so important, because in organic agriculture, if you end up with a problem, it is really hard to control. And so you need to have a multi-pronged IPM, integrated pest management program. So how are you keeping those plants, how are you keeping those plants healthy? Starts with addressing all of the issues. So hopefully you're keeping your environments clean, hopefully your light's good, your air movement's good, and then it makes it easier to manage those plants in an organic fashion. It's why a lot of growers or cultivators will reach for those chemicals, because you start to have a problem and you want to get rid of it, and you want to get rid of it quick. Or you're not a very good grower and you allow a problem to get to a level that's not controllable by an organic agricultural method. You reach for those chemicals. So integrated pest management, having several
It's all
aspects.
preventative now, man. We can't afford to slip like we used to.
No.
Or no more like Eagle 20s and Adams of the world. You know, nuclear weapon pesticide, just one and done, you know. It's like that stuff, you can't touch it anymore.
And I might say this too, we have a tendency when you listen to a panel like this, guys that have lots of experience with the things we talk about, it has a tendency to seem complicated, when actually it isn't that complicated. When you follow certain paths and take care of certain issues, it's easy to do. And so it isn't to make it complicated for the grower, it's to make it more simple for the grower.
Well, let's make it, I mean, this is the first time in human history that like probably everybody in this room doesn't know how to grow their own food. You know, I mean, that was like always been, I believe it's like ingrained in our DNA from that particular standpoint. I mean, we've always been, in Mesopotamia, we've always been growing crops to sustain ourselves. So I mean, I don't know, like, I agree, like very, very innate human thing to grow. It is very simple. Except, I'll tell you what, man, we've got so many doctors going on this, and especially organic. Like, organic was a big nut for us to crack. It took a long time to figure it out, because generally when you're feeding organic fertilizers, they take 24 hours to break down into usable food. Unless you're supplementing that somehow, you can't have a part where your plant is stalling out in its metabolism, like eating, slowing down, eating, slowing down. We ended up putting a chelated micronutrient pack in the front end of our stuff, just to like act as, you know, hors d'oeuvres while the main course is being prepared to keep the plant on a consistent flow. However, for us to embed all that technology is expensive with all these doctors, and it doesn't match economies of scale in today's organic farming atmosphere. You can only afford to use my stuff on a small, like you couldn't use it, right? It's not gonna make sense at all, you know, but it's interesting on the technology standpoint. We're finding organic delivery systems that are incredible. Like our quantities outperformed Cincy and Con at one point in the lab, and it blew my mind. Like it was just, how's the organic product outrunning the non-organic one? But it did, and it's like, we're learning, I said this last time, there's more we don't know about this plant than what we do. There's more we don't know about dirt than what we do, but we are learning every day, and like in 10 years, it should be some exciting stuff. You know, we're really tracking like a lot of nuts right now with all the doctors coming into the space. Like, oh no, it's like .com, you remember, like, they're saying by like next year, electrical efficiency of LEDs should probably double because there's so many people in that space. You know, .com was compounding data. It feels like that's what's happening now with all the money and the education, academia coming in here, and everybody finally sharing notes. It's like we're able to just, every year we cover so much more space than the year before. On a medicinal standpoint with cannabinoid, you know, seeing what they are, terpenes, flavonoids, esters, just, it's just pretty incredible. We're like on the cutting edge of science right now. I'm pretty psyched on it.
Interesting. So, does anybody else have anything to add to that topic? All right, so I'd like to talk about some of the major points that you were speaking on, James, when you were talking about the 3 Ps that are involved with how you perform things. I want you to elaborate on that and why that's important in this discussion.
Yeah, so kind of segueing from what LJ was just saying in terms of the organic nutrient that shouldn't be as powerful as this, you know, synthetic chemical created by Monsanto. This is a spiritual plant. It is a bioremediating plant, so it means it's sucking up everything in its environment. And so one of the ways they're using hemp right now is actually cleaning radiation out of the soil outside Fukushima. This plant is unbelievable in what it can do for us. The closer you can bring that back to Mother Nature, the more productive the plant is. And I'm not saying production by the amount of weight you're getting per watt per gram per square foot. I'm talking about those minor cannabinoids that are operating in the background that we don't even pay attention to right now. And so for us as a garden, it's really important for me as a nurse to want to make sure I'm putting the best, cleanest product into somebody's body, because one, I know what all those chemicals and pesticides and mineral salts are doing in the body, and two, I want to make sure my workers who are around my farm are healthy and getting what they need, and then what the planet needs. I mean, the reason why Florida is dealing with this never-ending problem of blue-green algae is because they're dumping tons of agricultural chemicals into their soil, mostly from, everywhere from the Mississippi River Valley to, their coastal farms, and so we need to be thinking about the 3 Ps, which is people, planet, and then profits. I'm a firm believer that if you do right by the people who are both ingesting your products as well as working on your products, and you do right by the planet, that you eventually will see some dollars. Now, it's been a rough go in Oregon, if you may have paid attention. We have a bit of an oversupply problem that's created some serious troubles in the market as a whole. But I continue to try and stay true to that plant, because this is a spiritual karmic plant that responds to the energy that we give it. That responds to the way in which we cultivate this plant. And that's not to say that I couldn't create hydroponic weed in a lab somewhere and have it look amazing, and maybe it smells amazing on the surface of the nose, but you start diving below that superficial nose of that kind of chemical terpene smell, and you really start to smell those fertilizers and whatever else they're dumping on those plants. And that's not what does best in the body. That is not what produces the broadest cannabinoid profile or the broadest terpene profile. The plant wants natural sunlight, wants to be in the dirt. It wants you to treat it in a manner that's respectful of the way it was grown 10,000 years ago, because we've been using this plant for a long time.
I want to elaborate on what he's been saying here just a little bit. If you're in it for the money and you want to take the shortcut to the money, you're liable to get in trouble. So the reason we're here as a panel today is to help you to do the right things to accomplish whatever it takes to create a superior product. And if you create that superior product, you're going to be popular in the marketplace. It's just that simple. When customers like you, they'll come back. And so that's what this panel is for, is to help you do that. And there's a tremendous opportunity in the cannabis world right now. And that is that we're relatively new, we're developing things that agriculture has traditionally been doing for a long time. Tradition is so strong out there in the agricultural community that they don't accept all of these opportunities to do a better job, including fertilizer, plant nutrients, clean air, all of these things we talk about here. But here in the cannabis industry, we have the opportunity to get started right.
I wanted to comment on your comment about the runoff in Florida. One of the main advantages of using organic fertilizers is that they take biological activity to release their nutrients, whereas chemical fertilizers, you put water on it, they dissolve, and they run through the soil and get into our ecosystem. So it's vitally important that we use organic fertilizers to not only keep our waters clean, but it also builds organic matter in the soil. So, and it goes back again to what James said, it all starts with the soil.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Dale, I know you were speaking on, you asked me, what are the environmental benefits of using organic fertilizers? Like, so when using NPK, like you said, they're just released into the environment. Why exactly does that result negative things versus, an organic fertilizer would?
Well, all plants need NPK, and you want to build a soil structure where that NPK is available to plants. And by using organic fertilizers, you build that soil structure. And if you use other products, there's bacteria products that are beneficial, there's mycorrhizal products that are beneficial. It all goes to build the soil. Certain mycorrhizal species, they actually convert inorganic nutrients or insoluble nutrients into soluble forms that become available to the plant that otherwise would not be available. So there's probably has another 10 benefits of organic fertilizer on top of that list.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, some very interesting corporate stuff. So glyphosate we know is a carcinogen. Glyphosate is the product that Monsanto basically used to make a lot of money. And in 2015, the European Union banned glyphosate because they knew it was a carcinogen. That same year, the U.S. allowed double the concentration to be allowed to be used on the agricultural market on plants here in the United States. That just blows my mind. But we know that they're harmful for the environment. And the talk I did last week at NCIA was sustainability as an investment tool. So we don't just have to look at being sustainable or being organic as doing what's right. It's actually cheaper sometimes. I save a lot of money by using soil and composting my dirt and not buying vats of chemicals to pour on my plants. Not using 5 times as much water as I need because soil holds water the best out of all of the media. So it's not just about doing what's right for the patient or doing what's right for the planet. Sometimes it's about economics too, and if you're smart and you look at what the cultivation strategy that you're using is, you can find that there are ways of doing things that are better for all three, and why not choose that methodology? So, I think beyond, the plant benefits and the planet benefits, it's the money benefit too, right? So, I think that when you're considering how you're going to be cultivating plants or why you're going to do it in a certain way, you should really pay attention to all of the benefits of choosing maybe a sustainable option, a way of cleaning your air so that you don't have to spray harmful pesticides, or using an organic nutrient that is going to feed the plant really what it needs, and because the plant's not going to break it down if it doesn't need it. And and that's why a lot of people chase problems in their garden, because they're like, oh, I've got a nitrogen problem, so they dump a bunch of nitrogen in, and then you attract pests because pests eat nitrogen. So now you've got to do something about the pest problem that you have, and you get in this constant loop of chasing problems, and it's bad for revenues because you are trying to stabilize how your plant's growing and how much you're going to feed to these plants, and so it all builds on itself in really a feedback loop that's positive for the environment, the patient, and the planet.
Yeah, well, if you do the math, it isn't hard to understand that if you keep your product clean, the customer is going to like it better, and it's going to be worth more, and they're going to come back to you. They'll come back to you for more. But
and your shit's not going to get seized by the government.
The other end of that is if you start losing product to mold, bacteria, and pathogens, and once you notice it, it's too late. I mean, you're going to start throwing product away, and maybe it will save some. I know this in the potato industry. They try to save as many as they possibly can, but once you get started, it's hard to sell a product that is high quality anymore, and that affects your reputation in the marketplace. So if you lose, it doesn't take rocket scientists have figured out that if you got $1 million worth of cannabis in a grow shed, that if you lose 10% of that to mold, or even 20% of that to mold, how much money is that?
2016,
100 grand?
2016, our outdoor farmers lost about 50% of the crop to molds.
Yeah.
Because those are the outdoor farmers that, you get an early rain and suddenly you can't control your plants are just staying wet and moist, and boom, it's gone just like that.
Yeah, you lose the whole crop.
That's the most unforgiving thing I think I've ever done as a career, dude. Like, you get 1-2 things wrong, it's like 40% of what that plant could have produced. Like, one bad day over like once, and I lose half. It's just like, god damn.
And that brings up a good point, data. You gotta be smart about your tracking so that you're understanding.
Keep track.
I'm just saying, like, with the innovations that like our team's making, having 25 doctors and a bunch of potheads, like, just testing good, that's great, like, we're doing, don't get me wrong, we're using gas chromatography, film liquid chromatography, and all this other shit to chase it and everything.
Bullshit, you're sitting around the campfire smoking weed.
Like, way to go. I'm just saying, like, right now, like, my product it's expensive for what an organic is, but I mean, I'm having to do things like chelation, amino complex or uptake, and things so we can move throttle. It's like, when whatever, God, I'm trying to think, well, it's super expensive. When computers came out, they were super expensive. It's like, with the economies of scale, and as we get better at this, technology tends to reduce. We try to stay and reduce costs. We try to stay on the front line of all of it, so we don't give a shit. We'll just blast millions into development, like, let's see what that does, because Mike's like the ultimate pothead. Sorry, that's my boss. But it's just interesting that these tools will become available down the road, and more easily approachable. And like, the fact that it outperformed our other lines we also dumped tons of money into is just, it said a lot to me for organics. Like, organics is like kind of a hard nut to crack. Keep it all clean and straight in the plant, giving the plant what it wants, while still just like throttling the output, throttling the resin, getting it like super high concentration. It's just interesting where it's going, you know what I mean? I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, it's all relative too. I mean, what does it cost you is relative to what it saves you. It may cost you more for the product, but if it's creating more value on the front line,
The
who
cost
cares?
of the product versus the yield that we're seeing, like, on the side and out in the field. I mean, guys just using it. Like, the guys who use it, use the hell out of it, and they don't mind absorbing the cost. But, like, Oregon, for instance, I told you, I was just up there. There was, like, pot surplus, and the interstate trafficking bill just came out. Yeah, love that. Like, we start throwing it back and forth between states. Oh, my God, that's like my federal wish.
Yeah.
Just whatever. But like, it's just interesting. Like, I saw this great, fantastic weed just sitting up there, and it's heartbreaking. It's like devastating.
Yeah.
Well, because I know what it is to like bleed for this plant. They tried to call me master drawer. I'm like, I'm not a master of shit. I believe I work for her. She's out in bed at midnight. I'm out of bed like, please don't do this to me. Like, it's like clearly I'm a bitch in this relationship. You know, it's just, I don't know. It takes so much love to do this, and so much passion. Like, risking your freedom, risking like, sorry, baby, you know, if like the cops come in, I just gotta grow this plant. You know, like, who does that? Well, we did, but
Yeah.
just an interesting way to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so in closing, I'd like to get the audience participation, and I'd like to let you guys go down the line and just lament to the public whatever angle that you would want them to leave with when it comes to organic farming, something that they need to either implement or look at, or just make sure that they are taking with them as they leave. You can start either which one.
So, cannabis is a wellness drug. Your body needs this substance. The reason you have an endocannabinoid system is because your body wants it. It's producing it on its own so that your body can operate optimally. We know that boosting that system with phytocannabinoids makes us healthier. If you're feeding that body a bunch of tainted product, especially for people who are already immunocompromised or children with seizures, or you don't want to be putting toxic substances in their body. Ammonium nitrate is toxic. We have to be aware of what we're feeding to people in our products. And if you're not striving to be fully organic or even as organic as you can be, I guess you can do that if what you think about is money. But as a nurse, my job is to help people, to heal people, and to give them a product that I know is potentially harmful, at least to a large percentage of the population. Yeah, maybe there's some people that can process out waste products better than others, but in general, you need to be feeding consumers as a whole, not just medical patients, but consumers as a whole, clean product that's good for them. It's a wellness drug that we all need, but it's got to be clean.
Airborne is something that hasn't been addressed much in the past. And the reason it hasn't is because the industry is limited to filtration. Filtration has grown to, they make HEPA filters now that will capture particles down to 0.3 of 1 micron. Now just put that all in perspective. Anything smaller than 20 micron, the eye doesn't see. So we're talking about 0.3 of 1 micron. They build HEPA filters that will collect, and the reason they build it to that stage is because that's about as small as bacteria does. Okay? And they'll be able to capture those. But the problem with the filtration is that in order to capture those, they have to build a finer and finer mesh. And when they build the finer and finer mesh, it takes more and more energy to push the air through, and it collects particulates to the point to where it plugs up immediately almost, and you have to replace those, and they're very expensive to do. That was the issue that I addressed some years ago. I've been around this industry for over 30 years. And what we addressed was we got to get away from filtration because of the pressure drop, the cost of the energy, and the plugging and the filtration. So when you can do that without losing the pressure, without deteriorating the circulation system, that it's always constant and always there and always cleaning, then you can run that on a regulatory basis to the point where it reaches an optimum for you and keeps all the airborne particles out. And I heard you talk about heavy metals. You know, and the people that are talking about heavy metals are talking about the source of heavy metals from the soil and the uptake of the plant. But I'm here to tell you that heavy metals are everywhere. There are heavy metals in this room. You're breathing bacteria and heavy metals right now that you don't see and you don't even know or realize.
Why don't you put one of your machines in here so we can breathe clean air?
Exactly. Give me a call. But to understand that, I mean, we're treating potatoes better than we treat human beings. And this man is a nurse, okay? I don't know if you realize that more than half of surgical site infections are caused by airborne bacteria. And doctors are just beginning to recognize that. Just within the last decade, with the big Ebola scare, Staphylococcus, they used to say comes on the skin. My question to them was, well, then why do we find it in your nostrils all the time? But just by the fact that you're breathing in here, you're putting forth an aerosol. We're all sharing that aerosol in this room right now. And it's the things that you can't see that start the problems on your product. Same problem. If you eliminate it, if we were to put a scrubber in this room, do that, and vacuum this air out, and put clean air back in, we could do that at a more rapid rate than you're breathing. And we do the same thing with plants. And so it's a breakthrough technology in this industry, in the agriculture industry. It's been around in scrubbing for a while. But I'm excited because that aspect can keep your product from deteriorating to the point where you don't lose the profit on your bottom line. You can make the money and your customers are very happy. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking about what you were saying, James, about the endocannabinoid system. You know, they just recently proved that runner's high wasn't like endorphins, it was your endocannabinoid system just blasting CBD to the brain, which is insane. Like the stuff that we're learning and able to study now is incredible. I do agree, the plant has, 10 million years of evolution type of thing. We do need it with soils and organic input materials. You can get like really interesting and probably more accurate cannabinoid profiles, lipids, fats, esters, you know, all that. And like, it's gonna create a more pleasurable experience. As far as like, when somebody says organic, I just think of, oh my God, what's the word? I'm such an idiot. Sustainable, repeatable, sorry. Yeah.
Environmental.
Oh, dude, this is bad. Wow. Like, yeah,
It's late today.
efficient. I mean, there's water reclamation units now that are operating at 95% efficiency. So, like, taking your nutrient water, catching it back, cleaning it, reserve it. That is highly efficient because water, too, is a commodity. It seems like everything that we're doing kind of in the pot space, because we have the money to do lots of R&D, like, tomatoes just don't pay what pot does. We can buy more expensive shit and dry it out and, like, learn about it. And I like think we lead agriculture that way. Or get sustainable. That was my, I remember. And sustainability comes from like recapturing everything. I feel like we're just making leaps and bounds in technology, right? Or the industry's making leaps and bounds in technology. It's pretty exciting. I mean, just to be here for it.
It is.
Like I felt like 12, 15 years ago we were banging oxymate fire, and now it's just like, doctor this, study that, we're moving forward with that. It's very cool.
Yep.
That's all I got, thanks.
Okay, well, I may not have the intense knowledge that these guys have, but one thing I can share is it all starts with the soil. Know your soil, know what the problems are, and know what organic methods that are available to ameliorate those problems. So that's my simple message to everybody.
It's all about the aggregates.
It's all in there.
All right, I'd like to open the floor to any questions. If anybody has anything they'd like to direct towards the panel.
I think I have a few questions. First one will probably be, Dale.
Yes.
It's regarding, I guess, infection or inoculation, if you would, with mycorrhiza. I heard once that it might take somewhere 12 to 16 weeks for cannabis to become fully inoculated with mycorrhiza. Wondering what your thoughts are, if you've seen any research on anything like that.
Well, to be honest, this is my first foray into cannabis and hemp, so I do not know. There may be some people here that have some knowledge as to how long it takes once you inoculate the plant for the mycorrhizae to invade the root and start growing filaments. It depends on the plant, it depends on the soil, it depends on a lot of variables, but does anybody have?
I see it immediately, visually. I have my grandmother in aspect lately, but I mean, don't you see the
Those
like
cool.
18 hours later?
Yeah, those connections.
I mean, they jump on them immediately.
They start shooting hyphae within the first 24 hours of a taproot going down into the soil.
That's providing you have a mycorrhiza species that's compatible with that plant root.
Like, we make our own. We brewed like super strains with all these doctors and 10,000 liter reactors and blah, 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 so we can just create like what we call super strains that react and hit fast and all that. We separate them all out. It's a lot of work, whatever. But yeah, you can see, I can visually see it sometimes within, God, maybe 8 hours, 10 hours. Like, you just see leaves almost like, just reach for the sky.
And yeah, sometimes you have to remember root zones release terpenes too, and these terpenes interact and communicate with microscopic communities. So sometimes, like you were saying, there's some strains that adapt to certain mycorrhizae faster than others would. That's just because of the terpenes that the root zone is letting out. So like we said, it needs more research, and like it's 50 years of justifiable research, and that wouldn't even get the ball rolling, you know, in comparison to other. Yeah, easily. So your mycorrhizae should be within the first 24 hours, and if they're not, maybe you should switch up your chemo.
Yes.
But also remember, this is, like when you break your arm, it doesn't heal in a day, right? So if your plant has problems, yes, you will start to see it looking healthier quickly, but also don't expect the problem to go away right away. Like, give it some time to heal, and that kind of gets back to what I was saying with people who chase problems, is they give themselves more problems because they keep trying to treat something and they're like, oh my God, it's not fixed in a day. Nothing gets fixed in a day. Like, this is a living creature that takes time. So don't go chasing things. Give the plant time.
I guess a follow-up question would be regarding timing of other inoculants in conjunction with the mycorrhiza, being that I'm under the influence that trichoderma has the capacity to maybe outcompete and even eat mycorrhizae. And I'm wondering if you guys had any experience on when would be the appropriate time to inoculate with different species.
That's why we started making our own bacteria, because when we looked in like bottles of competitors, when they mix it all together, like everything in one bottle, we were seeing active wars going on between like bacteria and fungus, and they're meeting and forming a hormone. The hormone's not always good, sometimes they are, but it takes like a team of microbiologists to chase all this and like pin it down. So we separated them into 3 products and put antagonist compounds that would stop them from replicating until they ate water, and then they would like mass replicate. Also, the addition of carbohydrates to feed them, to keep them from carnivorizing, it's not a word, whatever, eating each other is what I'm trying to say. So, I mean, there's like emerging, there's just, again, there's more we don't know than what we do right now. There's just millions, billions of things in the dirt that we're like, oh, okay, we got some of that. You know, it's like, hard question to answer, but like, we saw that going, so we split it up into 3 different things ourselves. That's what my company did to get around that part.
I combine stuff with my mycorrhizas all the time though, so Dale is into the fungi. I use Root Shield. It's a predator fungus. And of course, if you've got a problem, you want to be able to treat that problem, but also sometimes, you out of balance that network of bacteria to fungal. So that's where, what LJ's talking about is really going to help. Because if you're using your mycorrhiza, but then you also are applying a root shield, you probably want to hit some heavier mycorrhizal bacteria with that root shield. So, it's looking at the balance and just thinking about that circle of life.
Think in a circle, not a straight line.
Yeah, for sure.
I have 2 questions that are more on the economic side of organic. The question is there demand today for organic growing, and what is the price premium perhaps that people might be willing to pay for it over non-organic?
So at the conference I spoke at last week, the guys from Colorado said it's about a 20 to 30% premium for organics. I have to say in Oregon, it doesn't matter. Right now, the market was so cheap that people were just looking for the cheapest product on the shelves, and so their intake managers are buying the cheapest product. And so maybe there was 1 or 2 brands that was still charging a premium, but for the most part, we were all struggling. And, everybody tells you they're organic. And so, they've got 500 farms that tell them they're organic. How are they going to separate out? Most of the time, none of them are gardeners. They've never been to anybody's farms. So without some sort of a third-party certifier, there's no way to even tell if someone's actually organic or not. And then, like I said, even in those cases, someone could have been organic at the time they had their soil tested, and now they're not. But I think for the overall in the market, what you see is about 20 to 30%. But the market is the Wild West right now, so I don't know that we're fully seeing the cost benefits to organic agriculture on a product sales standpoint just yet.
This question's for James related to certification. With the Farm Bill related to hemp, do you see the certifiers now being able to certify hemp?
You can certify organic hemp, yeah.
Okay. And then within the rules of certifiers, it's very similar to most organics where as people start pushing higher THC or lower THC or higher CBD, that GMO will be off limits to the cannabis business also? And organics, that's, most organics you don't allow GMO.
Yeah,
All organic.
Can we use a different term? Can we use the term transgenic? GMO it's understood the wrong way. A lot of people understand it's such a negative thing as a horticultural scientist and somebody who views himself as an organic, deep organic person. There's simply no way we're going to be able to feed the planet with the performance of the plants now, with the rising CO2 levels. I mean, we have zones that we have differentiated plants have been differentiated in this country to perform, like our wheat belt. It's moving north because our planet is getting hotter. Iowa, it's transgenic. We're unlocking genes via enzymes that are already there, sometimes inserting genes that are compatible with this species. You remember these things are organics, they're organic living things. So if the genes that you turn on or introduce from another species aren't compatible, then it just is not going to live. So if at the end of the day you get an end product that is transgenic, you should be happy for it because it's here for our benefit. There's nothing that can mutate us from eating transgenic crops. It's just all, I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, you probably speak better to this than anybody, but you know, GMO is often associated with all of the negative because of the way Monsanto used it. But natural selection is almost a form of GMO, right? It happens over a longer period of time, whereas in a GMO, we're trying to navigate that channel in a quicker phase. But so I don't necessarily think all GMOs are bad, but you can't say that today because they're all associated with Monsanto and glyphosate use and Roundup.
James, can you please clarify the difference between a genetically modified organism and good breeding?
And what?
Good breeding.
Good breeder.
Growing something from organic practices, from organic seed versus growing it from organic, treating it with pesticides versus not treating it with pesticides.
I'm going to let Bryant touch on that, but what I'll say is, you know, GMO really is about turning on certain parts of the DNA of that plant, and there are ways to do that in a natural environment. I mean, as he said, like natural stressors can sometimes activate a new part of the DNA sequence in the plant that's going to allow it to be healthy. But yes, healthy breeding, you know, happens over time, and you're splicing genetics that you want to use together versus altering the DNA of the sequence in a lab dish. Right?
Yeah,
Brian, maybe you
transgenic crops. The only difference is, so nature already figured out a shortcut. We call them enzymes. We simply use enzymes as the vehicle of shortcutting this natural selection that would happen in nature given the right circumstances over 1 million years. Just speeding it up and using the crop, say it's an annual crop. If we use a transgenic crop that's an annual crop, we can see results in 1 growth cycle. We can have 6 growth cycles of a certain annual crop within a year. This is super beneficial for the human population.